You've probably heard of the herpes virus family, right? Well, there's a member called the Epstein-Barr virus, or EBV for short, and it is hiding a wild secret. For most people, it's totally harmless. But for a few, it's a key accomplice in a microscopic crime, the development of cancer. So today, we're diving deep into this molecular heist. So get this. More than 90% of adults walking the planet carry this virus. It's one of the most common human viruses out there. The odds are pretty high that it's inside you, it's inside me, just living quietly in our cells. And that leads us to the big central paradox, right? How can a virus be so widespread, so benign for almost everyone, yet be tied to such serious diseases for a handful of people? What's the trigger? What flips that switch? That is exactly what we are going to unpack. Okay, so here's our game plan for cracking this case. First, we'll tackle that paradox of this super common virus. Then, we're going to follow its trail, see how it gets in and, hides out. After that, we'll meet the perps, the molecular hijackers doing the real dirty work. And finally, we'll figure out what actually lets this heist succeed. So let's start with this idea of EBV as this ghost in our system. It's basically a permanent tenant that, for most of its life, does absolutely nothing to let us know it's there. But it definitely has a dark side. And the evidence connecting EBV to cancer? It's really strong. It keeps showing up at the scene of the crime for several different cancers. You've got B-cell lymphomas, especially in people with weakened immune systems, Burkitt lymphoma in certain parts of Africa, and even some cancers of the nose, throat, and stomach. But how does it even get there? Which brings us to the virus's whole infiltration strategy. To become a lifelong resident, EBV can't just barge in and announce its presence. No, it has to go into full-on stealth mode. And the secret to its success is something called a latent infection. From the virus's point of view, this is just brilliant. It infects one of your cells, specifically your B cells, which are a type of immune cell, and then it just goes to sleep. It doesn't make new viruses, it doesn't kill the cell, it just hides out, dormant, waiting. So here's how the break-in goes down. First, the virus uses a specific receptor on your B cells called CD21, kind of like a key to a locked door. Once it's inside, it doesn't just hide. Oh no, it pulls off its first big trick, immortalization. It starts expressing its own proteins that basically hotwire the cell, forcing it to just divide and grow forever. This is how the virus sets up a permanent, hidden reservoir of infected cells inside us. And now we get to the absolute core of the heist. How does EBV actually immortalize a cell? Well, it uses a set of really sophisticated molecular tools, viral proteins that act like master thieves, hijacking the cell's own machinery for their own purposes. Okay, let's meet the first hijacker, a protein called LMP1. What's so amazing here is how it pulls off this perfect act of mimicry. See, normally a B cell's growth is controlled by a receptor called CD40, and it needs a very specific go signal from another immune cell to turn on. But LMP1 just pretends to be a CD40 receptor that's permanently stuck in the on position. It's constantly screaming at the cell to grow, 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 with no outside signal needed at all. And this rogue on signal from LMP1, well, it sets off a whole chain reaction inside the cell. It activates these super powerful growth pathways like NF-kappa B and JAK-STAT, basically slamming the cell's accelerator to the floor. And maybe even more important, it activates a protein called BCL2. You can think of BCL2 as the cell's cancel self-destruct button. So now, the cell isn't just dividing like crazy, it's also been told it's not allowed to die. The second master thief is a protein called EBNA2. So if LMP1 hotwired the growth engine, EBNA2 is the one that breaks into the control room and just starts flipping all the switches. It mimics another one of the cell's own proteins, the Notch receptor, which is in charge of turning on critical genes. And just like LMP1, EBNA2 impersonates a version of Notch that's always on. And what switches does it flip? Oh, only the most dangerous ones. EBNA2 forces the cell to activate its own powerful genes, including things like cyclin D, a master regulator of cell division, and the SRC family of proto-oncogenes. Now, these are normal genes that control growth, but when they're switched on at the wrong time, they're just one step away from becoming full-blown cancer drivers. The virus is literally making the cell build its own prison. So you might be thinking, with all this insane cellular hijacking going on, why aren't we all developing these cancers? Well, it's because the heist, it usually fails. And that's because there's a police force on patrol. In a healthy person, our immune system, specifically our T cells, are really good at recognizing these hijacked, out-of-control B cells and just eliminating them. They keep the virus and its plans in check, the police force is effective, and the crime is contained. And this quote right here, it gets right to the heart of it. For this whole heist to actually succeed, for cancer to develop, the criminals have to find a way to dodge the cops. The cancer only happens when the virus and the infected cells manage to escape the immune system's surveillance. Now, check this out. This shows how the heist plays out differently in different situations. In Burkitt lymphoma, EBV is more like a distraction. It revs up the B cells, creates chaos, and that chaos makes it easier for another genetic mistake to happen, a getaway car called the MYC translocation. That's the real cancer driver. And notice this, the tumor cells often turn off the viral proteins to hide from the cops. But now look at lymphomas in immunosuppressed people. Here, the police force is weak. EBV is the direct driver, and its hijacking proteins are on full blast. So the key takeaway is this. EBV-driven cancer needs a perfect storm. It's not enough for the virus to just hijack the cell. It also needs a co-conspirator, either a second genetic hit that acts as a distraction or a compromised immune system that acts as a weakened police force. Only then can the heist really succeed. And this leaves us with a really fascinating final thought. The virus didn't invent some brand new cancer-causing tool. All it did was evolve to become a master of molecular impersonation. A really, really clever thief that learned how to pick the locks on the most powerful and the most dangerous machinery that our own cells already have. It's a pretty powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest threats don't come from creating something new, but from twisting what's already there.